Before we dive in, if you're into real stories from law enforcement, the calls that don't make sense, the addresses that can't exist, the patterns we're not supposed to notice, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a like if you want more night shift patrol stories. And seriously, comment below where you're watching from and what time is it there. I love hearing from people who work nights like I used to. Now, what I'm about to tell you happened in the summer of 1999 in a small city in Oregon, and it's the reason I don't work night shift anymore. Let's get into it. My name is Officer David Chen, and for 5 years I worked the graveyard shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. for the Gresham Police Department. Population 40,000, quiet suburb about 15 miles east of Portland. The kind of place where night shift meant responding to drunk drivers, domestic disturbances, the occasional burglary. Routine stuff, boring stuff. Until June 17, 1999, when I took a call to an address that didn't exist. It started like any other Thursday night. I'd just cleared a noise complaint around 2:30 a.m. when dispatch came over the radio. Linda Martinez been working dispatch for 12 years, voice I'd recognize anywhere. Unit 14, we have a welfare check. 847 Linden Street. Caller reports hearing screaming from inside the residence, requesting immediate response. I acknowledged and punched the address into my MDT, the mobile data terminal, basically a computer mounted in the patrol car. The mapping software loaded, showed me the route to Linden Street. About 6 blocks away, residential neighborhood should take 3 minutes. Unit 14 en route, I radioed back. Linden Street was one of those older neighborhoods. Houses from the 1950s and 60s. Big trees, quiet. I drove slowly, checking house numbers. 800, 23, 831, 839. And then the street ended. Dead end. No 847. I circled back, thinking I'd missed it. Checked both sides of the street carefully. The numbers jumped from 843 to 851. No 847 Linden Street. Dispatch, Unit 14. I'm at the 800 block of Linden, unable to locate 847. Can you verify the address? Linda's voice came back after a moment. Unit 14, address confirmed. 847 Linden Street. Caller stated they were a neighbor, heard screaming approximately 10 minutes ago. Dispatch, there is no 847 on this street. Numbers go from 843 to 851. It's a vacant lot between the two houses. I got out of my car with my flashlight, walked to the space between 843 and 851. It was just an empty lot, overgrown with weeds and blackberry bushes. No structure, no foundation, nothing suggesting a house had ever been there. Unit 14, are you saying the address doesn't exist? Linda sounded confused. That's correct. No structure at this location. Requesting you call back the complainant for clarification. Unit 14, there is no callback number. The call came from a payphone. That was unusual, but not impossible. Some people didn't want to give their personal information when reporting issues. Copy that. Clearing the call as unfounded. No structure at location. I got back in my car, marked the call as completed, thought nothing more of it. Probably a prank call. Kids messing around. Happened sometimes. 2 nights later, it happened again. June 19th, 1999. Saturday night, around 1:15 a.m. I was parked behind a closed gas station finishing paperwork when dispatch called. Unit 14, domestic disturbance. 1423 Maple Drive. Caller reports sounds of a fight, possible assault in progress. I knew Maple Drive. Nice area, newer houses. I acknowledged and headed that way, lights and sirens. Pulled onto Maple Drive, found the 1400 block. Started checking numbers. 1415, 1,419, 1,427, no 1,423. The space where it should have been was another vacant lot. Dispatch, Unit 14. I'm at the 1400 block of Maple Drive. The address you gave me doesn't exist. There's no 1423. Silence on the radio for a few seconds. Then Linda. Unit 14, confirming address 1423 Maple Drive. Caller was adamant about the location. Said they could see the assault through the window. There is no window to see through, dispatch. There's no house here, just an empty lot. Stand by, Unit 14. I waited, standing in front of the vacant lot with my flashlight, feeling increasingly uneasy. This was the second time in 3 days I'd been sent to an address that didn't exist. Linda came back on. Unit 14, caller hung up before we could get additional information. Call came from a payphone at the 7-Eleven on Powell Boulevard. Copy. Clearing as unfounded. But this time I didn't just drive away. I walked the vacant lot with my flashlight looking for, I don't know what. Evidence that a house had been there, signs of recent construction or demolition. Anything that would explain why someone would call 911 about this specific empty lot. I found something. In the center of the lot, hidden in the tall grass, was a concrete foundation. Old, cracked, barely visible. Whatever structure had been there was long gone, but the foundation remained. I photographed it, made notes. When I got back to the station at the end of my shift, I checked city records. 1,423 Maple Drive had been a residential address. The house burned down in 1987. The lot had been vacant for 12 years. Someone was calling 911 about houses that no longer existed. I should have reported it. Should have told my sergeant about the pattern I was seeing. But I wanted to understand it first. Didn't want to seem paranoid or crazy over what might still be coincidence or pranks. So I started keeping my own records. Every call to a non-existent address, I documented it. Date, time, location, what the caller reported, where the call came from. June 23rd, 3:47 a.m. Burglary in progress, 2156 Oak Street. No such address. Vacant lot where house burned in 1992. June 27th, 2:15 a.m. Medical emergency, 734 Elm Avenue. No such address. Vacant lot where house demolished in 1995. June 30th, 4:33 a.m. Shots fired, 1891. Pine Road. No such address. Vacant lot where house condemned and torn down in 1989. The pattern was clear. Every phantom call was to an address where a house used to stand but no longer existed. And they all came during night shift, between midnight and 5 a.m. On July 3rd, I finally told someone. My partner that night was Jake Morrison, been on the force for 8 years. Good cop, reliable, not prone to jumping to conclusions. We were parked outside a 24-hour diner getting coffee when I showed him my documentation. Jake, look at this. 9 calls in 2 weeks, all to addresses that don't exist. All to lots where houses used to be. All during night shift. He studied my notes, his expression getting more serious. You report this to the sergeant. Not yet. Wanted to see if there was actually a pattern first. There's definitely a pattern. Question is, what does it mean? Someone pranking us, testing response times. With payphones. That's a lot of effort for a prank. And why these specific locations? Jake handed back my notebook. Could be someone who used to live in these houses. Someone who's bitter about their home being torn down or burned. Trying to get us to respond to places that don't exist anymore as some kind of, I don't know, symbolic protest. That's a theory, I said, but it didn't feel right. Something about these calls felt wrong in a way I couldn't articulate. Report it to the sergeant tomorrow, Jake said. Let the detectives figure it out. Above our pay grade, I agreed. But that night, everything changed. July 3rd, 1999. 3:27 a.m. Jake and I were patrolling the west side when dispatch called. All units, we have a possible officer in distress. Unit 7 responded to a call at 9:45 Birch Lane approximately 15 minutes ago and is not responding to radio contact. All available units, please respond. Unit 7 was Officer Marcus Webb, 20-year veteran, solid cop, not the type to go radio silent without reason. Jake and I were closest. We hit lights and sirens, raced toward Birch Lane. Dispatch, Unit 14. What was Unit 7 responding to? Jake asked. Welfare check. Caller reported elderly resident hadn't been seen in several days. We pulled onto Birch Lane, found Unit 7's patrol car parked in front of 945. Engine running, lights still on, door open. But no Officer Webb. Unit 7, this is Unit 14. What's your status? Jake radioed. No response. We approached the house carefully, hands on our weapons. 945 Birch Lane was a small ranch-style home, lights off, looking abandoned. The front door was open. Officer Webb? I called out. Gresham Police, we're coming in. We entered the house, flashlights cutting through the darkness. The interior was wrong. The layout made no sense. We entered through the front door into what should have been a living room, but instead found ourselves in a narrow hallway that seemed to stretch impossibly long. Doors on both sides, all closed. This house is too small to have a hallway this long, Jake whispered. He was right. From outside, the house was maybe 1,200 square feet, but this hallway felt like it went on for 50 yards or more. Officer Webb? I called again. From somewhere deep in the house, we heard a response, Officer Webb's voice, but distorted, like it was coming through a bad radio signal. Help. Can't find the way out. We moved down the hallway, checking doors. Each one opened into empty rooms, not just unfurnished, empty. No carpet, no fixtures, no signs anyone had ever lived there. Just bare walls and concrete floors. The hallway kept going. We'd been walking for what felt like minutes, should have reached the back of the house long ago, but the corridor just continued. This isn't possible, Jake said. He turned around. The front door we'd entered through was gone. Behind us was just more hallway, stretching back into darkness. We need to get out of here, I said. We tried one of the doors. It opened into another hallway, identical to the one we were in. We tried another door, another hallway. Every door led to more impossible corridors, more empty rooms, more spaces that couldn't exist in a house this size. Webb, Jake shouted. Where are you? Can't find door, walked for hours. We'd been in the house for maybe 5 minutes. I pulled out my radio. Dispatch, Unit 14, we're at 945 Birch Lane with Unit 7. We need immediate backup. The structure is static. My radio was just producing static. Jake tried his radio, same thing, dead static. We're leaving, I said. Right now. Pick a direction and keep moving. We chose a door at random, went through, another hallway, picked another door, another hallway. Every direction looked the same, narrow corridor, closed doors, stretching into darkness. I was starting to panic when Jake grabbed my arm. Wait. Listen. I stopped, heard something. A sound from behind one of the doors. Not Officer Webb's voice, something else. A wet, sliding sound, like something large moving across a wet floor. The door started to open. Run, Jake said. We ran. Picked a door, any door, went through. Ran down the hallway, trying doors randomly, moving through impossible spaces, the wet sliding sound following us, getting closer. And then suddenly we were outside, standing on the front lawn of 945 Birch Lane. The house behind us was dark, quiet, looking completely normal. Jake and I stared at each other, breathing hard. "What the hell just happened?" he said. Before I could answer, we heard sirens, backup arriving. 2 patrol cars pulled up. Sergeant Williams got out of one of them. "Chen, Morrison, where's Officer Webb?" "Inside," I said. "Sergeant, we need to—" "Inside the house?" Williams looked at the dark structure. "Is he injured?" "No, he's—" "We need to talk about this, Sergeant. Something's wrong with that house." Williams stared at me. "What do you mean, something's wrong?" I tried to explain. The impossible hallways, the endless corridors, the fact that Officer Webb had been inside for hours, even though it had only been minutes. It sounded insane, even as I said it. Williams' expression hardened. "Have you been drinking, Officer Chen?" "No, sir. I'm telling you what we experienced. I'm going inside to find Officer Webb. You two stay here." Williams went into the house with 2 other officers. They came back out 3 minutes later, empty-handed. "There's nobody in there," Williams said. "It's an abandoned house, empty rooms, normal layout. No Officer Webb. No sign anyone's been inside in years." "That's impossible," Jake said. "We were just in there. We heard him on the radio." Williams pulled out his own radio. "Dispatch, this is Sergeant Williams. Run the call log for Unit 7's last location." Linda's voice came back. "Sergeant, Unit 7 did not respond to any calls tonight. Last radio contact was at 11:47 p.m. when Officer Webb cleared from his dinner break. He's been 10 to 8 all night." "That's wrong," I said. "You dispatched him to 945 Birch Lane. We heard you on the radio." "Officer Chen," Williams said carefully, "I'm going to need you and Officer Morrison to come back to the station. We need to do a welfare check. Make sure you're both fit for duty." "Sergeant, I know what I heard. That's an order, Chen. Both of you back to the station. Now." At the station, we were separated and interviewed. They wanted to know if we'd taken any medication, used any drugs, been exposed to chemicals. Standard questions when officers report experiencing something that doesn't match reality. I told them everything. About the phantom calls to non-existent addresses, about the pattern I'd documented, about the impossible hallways in the house. They sent me home. Told me to take a few days off, see a counselor, make sure I was handling the stress of night shift okay. Jake got the same treatment. But here's the thing. Officer Marcus Webb never came back to work. They found his patrol car 2 days later, abandoned on Birch Lane. But Webb himself? Gone. No trace. No explanation. The official story was that he'd had some kind of personal crisis, abandoned his post, and disappeared. But I knew better. He'd answered a call to an address that didn't exist, and he'd gotten lost in a space that shouldn't be possible. Just like Jake and I almost did. And when I checked the address the next day, when I looked up 945 Birch Lane in city records, the house had burned down in 1994. What we'd entered was a vacant lot. There was no house there. There hadn't been a house there for 5 years. So what had we gone inside? And where was Officer Marcus Webb? They put me on administrative leave for a week. Standard procedure after an officer goes missing on a call you responded to. They wanted to make sure I was mentally stable before returning to duty. I spent that week doing my own investigation. Started with the obvious question: who was making these calls? Every phantom call had come from a payphone. Different locations around the city, but always payphones. In 1999, there were still plenty of them around. Gas stations, convenience stores, outside shopping centers. I mapped every location where the calls had originated. 7 different payphones, all in the western part of the city, all within a 2-mile radius of each other. I drove to each location, checked the surrounding area. Most were in parking lots, well lit, visible, normal places, nothing suspicious. But one of them was different. The payphone outside the abandoned Safeway on Division Street. The call from this phone, the one about 847 Linden Street, my first phantom address, had come at 2:30 a.m. I drove there at the same time, 2:30 a.m. exactly, a week later. The parking lot was empty, streetlights buzzing, store windows dark and covered with plywood. The payphone stood in the corner, old-style booth with folding doors that didn't quite close. I parked and watched, waited to see if anyone would come use the phone. At 2:47 a.m., someone did. A woman, maybe 60 years old, wearing a nightgown and slippers. She walked across the empty parking lot like she was walking through her own home, completely unconcerned about being outside in her nightclothes at 3 a.m. She picked up the phone. I couldn't hear what she was saying from my car, but she was clearly making a call, talking animatedly, gesturing with her free hand, looking distressed. After about 2 minutes, she hung up. Then she just stood there staring at the phone. I got out of my car, approached carefully. "Ma'am, are you okay?" She didn't respond. Didn't even look at me. Just kept staring at the phone. "Ma'am, I'm Officer Chen with Gresham Police. Do you need help?" Still nothing. It was like I didn't exist. I moved closer, looked at her face. Her eyes were open but unfocused. Not drunk or drugged, more like she was sleepwalking. Present physically but not mentally. I reached out to touch her shoulder. My hand went through her. Not around her. Not past her. Through her. Like she wasn't solid. Like she was made of smoke or mist or something less than physical. I jerked my hand back. The woman turned and walked away, crossing the parking lot the same way she'd come, disappearing around the corner of the building. I ran after her, got to the corner in seconds, but when I looked down the side of the building, there was no one there. Just an empty alley, dumpsters, nothing else. She'd vanished. I went back to the payphone, examined it more carefully. The phone itself looked normal, cord, receiver, coin slot, instructions printed on the metal panel, but there was something scratched into the metal, words carved carefully. They call from houses that don't exist anymore. They don't know they're gone. Below that, a date, March 15th, 1987. The next day, I called Linda Martinez, the dispatcher. 12 years on the job, she'd know better than anyone about the history of weird calls. We met for coffee at a diner on her day off. I told her everything. The phantom calls, Officer Webb's disappearance, the woman at the payphone who wasn't solid. Linda listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "I need to show you something," she finally said. "Something I've been keeping track of for years." She pulled out a notebook from her purse. Old, worn, filled with handwritten entries. "I've been dispatching for 12 years, she said. "In that time, I've taken hundreds of thousands of calls. Most are routine, but some don't make sense. And I started noticing a pattern about 6 years ago." She opened the notebook, showed me pages of entries, dates, times, addresses, brief descriptions. Calls from addresses that don't exist. Calls where the caller's voice sounds wrong. Distant. Echoing. Like they're calling from very far away, even though the system shows them as local. Calls where the information given doesn't match reality. I've been documenting them. I looked at the entries. There were dozens, maybe hundreds. "Why didn't you report this?" I asked. "I did." 3 years ago. Showed this to the chief. You know what he said? That I was experiencing job stress, that I was reading patterns into random noise, that I should take some time off. So you stopped reporting it. I kept documenting it, but I stopped talking about it officially. What was the point? Nobody believed me. She paused. Until you. You've seen it too, the phantom calls. The houses that don't exist. Officer Webb is missing because of one of these calls, I said. Linda nodded slowly. He's not the first. She flipped back in her notebook, showed me an entry from 1993. Officer Sarah Mitchell. Responded to a call at 1567 Cherry Avenue. Never came back. Her patrol car was found parked in front of a vacant lot. Cherry Avenue doesn't go up to 1567. The lot where her car was found used to have a house, but it burned down in 1988. Jesus. And the department? Classified it as an officer who abandoned her post. She was going through a divorce, had some financial problems. They assumed she ran away to start over somewhere else. But you don't think so. I know she didn't. Sarah was a good cop. Dedicated. She wouldn't just leave. And I know what call she was responding to because I took it. The caller sounded wrong. Distant. Like they were calling from somewhere very far away, even though the system showed a local payphone. I felt cold, despite the warm coffee. How many others? Linda flipped through her notebook. 7 officers in 12 years. All disappeared while responding to calls at addresses that don't exist. All officially classified as abandonment or voluntary disappearance. The department doesn't want to admit that something's happening that they can't explain. 8 now, I said. With Marcus Webb. 8, Linda agreed quietly. Over the next 2 weeks, I dug into the history of every address where an officer had disappeared. Found the pattern Linda and I both expected. Every address was a location where someone had died. 847 Linden Street, house fire, 1985. 2 victims. 1423 Maple Drive, house fire, 1987. Family of 4. 945 Birch Lane, house fire, 1994. Elderly man, 1567 Cherry Avenue. House fire, 1988. Elderly couple. The pattern was clear. People died in house fires. The houses were demolished or left as vacant lots. And then, years later, 911 calls would come from those addresses. Officers would respond. Some officers would disappear. But why? What was happening at these non-existent addresses? I had a theory, the woman at the payphone, the one I could see through. She wasn't fully real. She was something else, a ghost, a memory, an echo of someone who used to exist. What if the people who died in those house fires were still there somehow? Still living in houses that only existed in whatever reality they inhabited? And what if they were calling 911, genuinely believing they were reporting emergencies, not knowing they were dead? And when officers responded to those calls, when we entered those houses, what if we were crossing from our reality into theirs? Into spaces where the laws of physics didn't apply, where time and distance worked differently. The hallways that went on forever, the rooms that led nowhere. Officer Webb's voice saying he'd been walking for hours when we'd only been inside for minutes. We'd entered a space that existed between realities, a house that was real to the people who died there but shouldn't be real to us. And some officers couldn't find their way back. I needed proof. Needed something concrete I could take to the department that they couldn't dismiss as stress or imagination. So I went back to 945 Birch Lane. Broad daylight this time, 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. The lot was empty. Overgrown grass, remnants of a foundation, nothing else. I walked the perimeter looking for anything unusual, found a patch of scorched earth where the house had burned, found part of the old foundation, found broken glass and rusted nails and the normal debris of a demolished structure. And I found something else, a metal box buried in the grass near where the front door would have been. Old, rusted, locked with a padlock that had corroded away. I opened it. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. An elderly man, the one who'd died in the 1994 fire, I assumed. Pictures of him at the house, in the yard, inside what looked like the living room. Normal family photos. But the last picture in the box was different. It showed the man standing in his living room. But the room wasn't normal. The walls were covered in writing. Hundreds of words scratched into the paint, all saying the same thing over and over. They don't answer, they don't come. I keep calling, but nobody helps. I turned the photo over. On the back, written in shaky handwriting, "If you're reading this, I'm already gone. The house won't let me leave. I've called 911 47 times. Nobody comes. Or if they come, I can't see them. I think I'm in between. I think when the house burned, I got stuck somewhere. Tell my family I tried to get out. Tell them I'm sorry." The photo was dated March 1994. The fire that killed him happened in June 1994. He'd been trapped in the house, or the memory of the house, or whatever reality the house existed in after burning, for 3 months before he finally died, calling 911 repeatedly, getting no response, or getting responses he couldn't perceive because the responders were in our reality and he was in somewhere else. But some of those 911 calls must have come through, and when officers responded, they found vacant lots. No house, no emergency. Until the night Jake and I responded. Until we somehow crossed over into that in-between space where the house still existed. I took the photos to Linda, showed her the writing on the wall, the message on the back. "This man died in 1994, I said, but he was making calls months before he died. Calls from a house that had already burned down. How is that possible?" "Time works differently there," Linda said. She looked pale. In that in-between space, whatever it is, the man who died in the fire, maybe for him it hadn't burned yet. Maybe he was experiencing time in the wrong order, or maybe time just doesn't work the same way in that space. And the officers who disappear? They get lost in that same space. Can't find their way back to our reality. They're not dead, they're just somewhere else. Still trying to do their jobs, still trying to respond to calls, still walking through impossible hallways looking for the exit. "How do we get them back?" I asked. Linda was quiet for a long time. Then, "I don't think we can. Once you're in that space, once you can't find the boundary back to our reality, I don't think there's a way out. There has to be." Jake and I got out. You got lucky. You found a door that led back. But Officer Webb didn't. Neither did the 7 others. I couldn't accept that, wouldn't accept that. 8 officers were trapped in impossible spaces between realities, and there had to be a way to bring them home. That night, July 18th, 1999, I went back on duty. Technically, I was supposed to be on desk duty, light assignments while I recovered from the stress of Webb's disappearance. But I convinced the sergeant to let me do patrol. Night shift, of course. Midnight to 8 a.m. At 2:47 a.m., dispatch called. "Unit 14, we have a welfare check. 1156 Sycamore Court. Caller reports elderly neighbor hasn't been seen in several days." My blood went cold. I checked the address in my MDT. Sycamore Court only went up to 1143. There was no 1156. Dispatch, I said carefully. Can you confirm that address? Confirmed, Unit 14. 1156 Sycamore Court. I knew what this was. Another phantom call, another address that didn't exist. Another trap that had already taken 8 officers. I should have refused the call, should have told dispatch I wasn't available, should have done anything except drive to that address. But I'd been thinking about this for weeks, about the pattern, about the officers who'd disappeared, and I had a theory about how to survive these calls. The key was not to go inside, not to cross that boundary between realities. Stay outside, in our reality, and you'd be safe. So I went. Drove to Sycamore Court, found the gap where 1156 should be. Another vacant lot, another foundation remnant. I parked my car, grabbed my flashlight, approached the lot. And this time, I saw it clearly. The house was there. Transparent, like looking through frosted glass, but there. A small ranch-style home, lights on in the windows, exactly where the vacant lot should be. And standing in the doorway, beckoning to me, was Officer Marcus Webb. "Jen," he called out. Thank God. I've been trying to get someone's attention for weeks. I need help. There are people trapped in here. I stayed on the sidewalk, didn't move toward the house. Webb, you need to come out. Come back to our side. I can't find the door, he said. I've been looking. The hallways keep changing. But you're here now. You can guide me out. Come inside. Help me navigate. No, I said. You need to come to me. Walk straight toward my voice. Don't look at the hallways. Don't try to navigate. Just walk toward my voice until you cross the threshold. It's not that simple, Webb said. The geometry doesn't work that way. You need to come in here, take my hand, lead me out. And I almost did. Almost crossed that boundary to help a fellow officer. But something stopped me. Webb looked wrong. Not physically, he looked fine, uninjured, exactly as I remembered him. But something about him was off. The way he stood, the way he spoke, the way he wasn't quite looking at me but slightly past me. Webb, I said, what was the last thing you ate before your shift started that night? He hesitated. What? Why does that matter? Just answer the question. I don't remember. Pizza? Maybe pizza. That was wrong. Webb was diabetic, strictly controlled his diet. He never ate pizza. You're not Webb, I said. The figure in the doorway smiled, and it was the wrongest thing I'd ever seen. Too wide, too many teeth, existing in too many dimensions at once. No, it agreed. But I wear him well, don't I? Come inside, Officer Chen. Come join your colleagues. They're all here, all still trying to do their jobs, still trying to save people in houses that don't exist anymore. Come be a hero. Come get lost with the rest of them. I backed away slowly. The house flickered, became more transparent, then more solid again, like it couldn't decide which reality it belonged to. You can't save them, the thing wearing Webb's face said. They're ours now. They crossed the boundary. They belong to the in-between. And soon, so will you. I got in my car, locked the doors, and drove away as fast as I could. Behind me, the house disappeared. Just a vacant lot again. Empty grass and broken foundation. But I knew the truth now. The officers who'd disappeared hadn't just gotten lost. They'd been taken. Something lived in those in-between spaces. Something that wore the faces of the missing, that lured more officers across the boundary, that fed on people who existed between one reality and another, and it was getting hungry. I didn't sleep after that shift. Went straight to Linda's house at 8 a.m., woke her up, told her what I'd seen. The entity wearing Officer Webb's face, the house flickering between realities, the confirmation that something was actively taking officers. "We need to tell the department," Linda said. "Show them the evidence." The photos, the patterns, everything. "They won't believe us." "You know they won't. They'll say I hallucinated it, that I'm experiencing post-traumatic stress, that I need psychological evaluation." "Then what do? "We get them back," I said. "All 8 officers. We figure out how to cross the boundary, navigate those spaces, and bring them home." Linda stared at me. "You just saw what happens when you try to cross that boundary. You saw something pretending to be Marcus Webb trying to lure you in. How are we supposed to rescue anyone when we can't even safely enter those spaces?" "I have an idea," I said, "but I'm going to need help." The theory was simple. The entity couldn't exist fully in our reality. It needed the in-between space, needed the houses that existed only partially. But we could exist in our reality completely. That was our advantage. If we could create a stable bridge between realities, a path that stayed anchored in our world even while extending into theirs, we might be able to walk into those spaces and walk back out without getting lost. "And how do we create this bridge?" Linda asked. "Fire," I said. "The houses became in-between spaces when they burned. Fire is the threshold, the boundary event. If we can recreate that fire, control it, we might be able to hold the boundary open long enough to go in and come back out." It was a crazy theory, based on guesswork and desperation more than actual knowledge. But it was all I had. I recruited Jake Morrison. He'd experienced the impossible hallways too, knew what we were dealing with. Told him my plan. "You want to intentionally cross into those spaces," he said, "after what we experienced, after what happened to Webb and the others. We're going to do it carefully, with preparation, with an anchor back to our reality." An anchor? Each other. We go in together, connected by rope. One person stays outside, in our reality, holding the other end. If someone gets lost, we follow the rope back. Jake thought about it, finally nodded. "When?" "Tonight. The next phantom call that comes in, we respond. But this time, we're ready. July 19th, 1999. 1:37 a.m. The call came exactly when I expected it to. "Dispatch. Unit 14. Welfare check. 2341 Cedar Avenue. Caller reports smell of gas, possible leak. Cedar Avenue didn't go up to 2341. I checked it immediately. Copy, dispatch, en route. Jake and I had prepared. 50 feet of climbing rope tied around my waist. Jake would stay outside, holding the other end. If I went into the in-between space, the rope would be my guide back. We drove to Cedar Avenue, found the location, another vacant lot. But this time I was ready for what I'd see. The house was there, transparent and flickering. A small 2-story colonial, lights on in the downstairs windows. I could smell smoke, not gas, smoke. This house had burned too. "I see it," Jake said quietly. "The house. It's there, but not." "You're staying out here," I said. "No matter what happens, no matter what you see, you stay in our reality. You're my anchor. If you're not back in 15 minutes, I'm pulling the rope. Fair enough." I approached the house. The closer I got, the more solid it became. Could see details now. Peeling paint, broken window, front door slightly ajar. Could hear sounds from inside. Footsteps, voices, the creak of old floorboards. I reached the threshold, felt the boundary like a physical sensation, like walking through a wall of cold water. And then I was inside. The interior was exactly what I expected. Impossible geometry, hallways that stretched too far, doors that led to more doors. But I had the rope now, had my anchor to reality. "Officer Webb," I called out. "Marcus Webb, if you're here, follow my voice." No response, just the echo of my own voice bouncing through impossible spaces. I moved carefully, paying out rope as I went deeper. Every 10 feet, I marked the wall with chalk, a way to track if I was going in circles. Found the first officer in what should have been a bedroom, but was instead a vast empty space, floor stretching away into darkness. Officer Sarah Mitchell, missing since 1993. She was sitting against a wall, uniform dirty and torn, looking exhausted. Mitchell? I approached carefully, checking to make sure this was really her and not another entity wearing a face. She looked up at me with eyes that were too hollow, too empty. "How long?" she asked. "How long have I been here?" "6 years," I said gently. She laughed bitterly. "Feels like longer. Feels like forever. Time doesn't work right here. I've walked for days. Or minutes. I can't tell anymore. I can get you out. I have a rope tied to our reality. We follow it back." "Doesn't work," Mitchell said. "The rope will lead you deeper." Everything here leads deeper. There is no back. There is no out. We're going to try anyway. "Come on, stand up." She didn't move. "Did you see it yet?" The thing that lives here. The thing that wears our faces. I saw it pretending to be Webb. It wears all of us eventually. Takes our forms, uses them to call more officers in. That's what it does. That's what it wants. More of us. Always more. Then we get you out before it can use you. I pulled her to her feet. She was lighter than she should be, like she was already fading. How long could someone exist in this space before they stopped being real? We followed the rope back, or tried to. But Mitchell was right. The hallway had changed. We were in a different corridor now, one I hadn't seen before. The rope led through a door, and beyond that door was another hallway and another, and another. "Told you," Mitchell said. "There's no out, only deeper." I refused to accept that. Pulled out my radio, even though I knew it wouldn't work here, and tried anyway. "Jake, can you hear me? Give the rope a tug if you can hear this." Static. But then, through the static, I felt the rope tighten. 3 sharp tugs. Jake was still out there. Still in our reality. Which meant the rope was still connected. Still real. Even if the path back had changed. "We follow the rope," I said, "no matter where it leads." We walked. Through hallways that twisted and turned. Through rooms that shouldn't connect. Through spaces that defied geometry, always following the rope, and we started finding more officers. Officer Thomas Hardy, missing 1995, sitting in a corner, muttering about radio codes and dispatch calls. Officer Jennifer Cruz, missing 1997, wandering a hallway, checking doors like she was still on patrol. Officer Marcus Webb, standing at an intersection of 4 corridors, looking lost and confused. "Webb," I called out. He turned, and for a moment I thought it was the entity again. But his eyes were human. Scared and tired, but human. "Jen? Is that really you?" "It's me. I'm here to get you out." "There is no out," he said, echoing Mitchell's words. "We're trapped. This place doesn't let go. It will if we force it to. Come on, all of you. Follow the rope. Jake is on the other end, in our reality. We follow it back. I gathered them, Mitchell, Hardy, Cruz, Webb, 4 officers who'd been lost in this space, existing in the in-between, slowly fading into nothing. We followed the rope together, and slowly, gradually, the hallways started to feel less wrong. The geometry began to make sense. Distances became normal, and then we saw the front door. It should have been that simple. Walk through the door, exit the house, return to reality. But as we approached, the thing appeared, not wearing anyone's face now, showing its true form, or at least as close to true form as something that existed between realities could show. It was large, filling the hallway, made of angles and surfaces that hurt to look at directly. When it moved through more dimensions than 3, disappearing and reappearing in ways that made my eyes water. "You take what's mine," it said, and its voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "You enter my space. You steal what I've collected." "These are people," I said. "Not collectibles. They belong in our reality, not yours. They crossed the boundary. They belong to the in-between now. They belong to me." The rope in my hand tightened, Jake pulling from the other side. Still there, still holding our anchor to reality. "We're leaving," I said. "All of us." The entity moved closer, and I could feel reality warping around it, feel the space trying to reshape itself to trap us. The front door was receding, getting farther away even though we weren't moving. I did the only thing I could think of. Pulled out my lighter, set fire to the rope. "What are you doing?" Mitchell screamed. "Creating a boundary," I said. "Fire is the threshold. If fire can create these in-between spaces, maybe it can destroy them too." The flame raced along the rope, back toward our reality. And where it burned, the space stabilized. The hallways stopped twisting. The geometry became normal. The entity screamed, a sound like reality tearing, and recoiled from the flame. "Run!" I shouted. We ran for the door. The entity tried to block us, tried to reshape the space to prevent our escape, but the burning rope held the boundary stable, kept the path clear. Officer Mitchell reached the door first, grabbed the handle. It opened onto Jake's face, onto our reality, onto the street outside. She stepped through and immediately collapsed. Jake caught her, pulled her fully out. Hardy next, then Cruz, then Webb, each of them passing through the door, crossing back into our reality, collapsing the moment they were through. I was last. The entity was right behind me, reaching with impossible geometries trying to pull me back. But I grabbed the door frame, pulled myself through, felt Jake's hands on my arms pulling me the rest of the way. And then I was outside, on the street, in reality, with 4 officers who'd been missing for years lying on the ground around me, breathing, alive, real. The house behind us flickered one last time, then disappeared. Just a vacant lot, empty grass and foundation. The entity was gone, or at least trapped back in whatever space it came from. The aftermath was complicated. 4 officers returned from the dead, or from missing, technically. The department didn't know what to do with them, couldn't explain their absence, couldn't explain how they'd survived for years without food or water. The official story became that they'd been suffering from collective delusions, had abandoned their posts simultaneously due to some kind of shared psychological break. They were all retired on medical disability, given counseling, encouraged never to speak about what really happened. Linda was forced into early retirement. Her documentation of the phantom calls was confiscated and lost. The department didn't want any record that they'd ignored her warnings for years. Jake and I were transferred to day shift, given desk jobs, told that we'd done good work rescuing the missing officers but that we needed time to recover from the traumatic experience. I didn't fight it. I was done with night shift, done with phantom calls and addresses that don't exist. But here's what scares me. We only rescued 4 officers. There were 8 missing. We never found the other 4. Officers David Wilson, Rachel Park, Michael Torres, and Susan Walsh. Still out there somewhere, still trapped in those in-between spaces, still existing in houses that don't exist in our reality. And the phantom calls haven't stopped. I'm 47 now, retired from police work 18 years ago, but I still keep in touch with people in the department. Still hear things. The night shift officers still get calls to addresses that don't exist. Vacant lots where houses used to stand. Houses that burned. Houses where people died. Houses that exist in the space between realities. Most officers know now to stay outside, not to cross that threshold, not to enter the houses that flicker at the edges of perception, the ones who don't know. Well, the department has lost 3 more officers in the past 18 years. Always night shift. Always responding to calls at addresses that don't exist. The thing is still out there. Still collecting officers. Still wearing the faces of the missing to lure in more. And I wonder sometimes if we made it worse. If by burning the rope, by forcing our way out, we damaged something. Made the boundary between realities more permeable. Made it easier for that entity to reach into our world. Because lately, the calls have been getting more frequent, more insistent, and they're not just coming to police anymore. Firefighters have started getting calls to addresses that don't exist. Paramedics, too. Any first responder who works night shift, who answers calls from dispatch, who goes to help people in trouble. The entity is hungry. It's learning, and it's expanding its collection. If you're a first responder reading this, if you work night shift, if you've ever been dispatched to an address that didn't exist, please be careful. If you arrive at a location and find a vacant lot, but can see a house flickering at the edges of your perception, don't go inside. Don't try to investigate. Don't try to help whoever might be calling from inside. Stay in your vehicle. Stay in our reality. Because once you cross that boundary, once you step into those houses that exist between one reality and another, you might not find your way back. Officer David Wilson, Rachel Park, Michael Torres, and Susan Walsh are still out there, still trapped, still existing in the in-between, and the entity wears their faces now, uses them to call for help, uses them to lure in more first responders. Don't be the next one it collects. Don't answer the phantom calls. Don't go to addresses that don't exist. Because some houses shouldn't be entered. Some emergencies can't be helped. And some calls should never be answered.